Hi, excuse me. Hi, it's me again. Just wanted to go over some more things for this coming week. So in this little video, I want us to look at procedural, declarative, and conceptual knowledge, formative and summative assessment. So I'm going to combine these two. So I've given you a something to read here about procedural and declarative knowledge, just to help you think about what that actually is. As I mentioned before, procedural is what you can do. Declarative is what you can say. So the example they give in the little brief article is that I could tell you how to swim. I could describe how that works. But to actually do it is something else, okay? So procedural and declarative are different in those regards. We have to think about that when we're planning our lesson plans and so forth. Equally as important as procedural and declarative knowledge are habits of mind. And I've given you an ASCD article. ASCD is a great organization. I highly recommend that you join it at some point. And this comes from the book, Learning and Leading with Habits of Mind. And this looks at 16 of the attributes that human beings display, okay, when they behave intelligently. These are really important, and we can't ignore these in terms of what we do in our classroom. Sometimes we get so focused on standards that we forget that there are lots of other things we teach kids in the process of teaching them standards. Okay, and they're listed here, and I'd like you to think about those. Persisting, perseverance. Stick with itness. Grit, whatever you want to call it, but you don't give up. Sometimes kids give up really easily. Okay, and I think it's really important for us to help them to not only to model for them perseverance, but to help them think about what it means to persevere. Managing impulsivity, again, our teenagers and tweeners, their brains are changing tremendously at these ages. In fact, their whole brain is being rewired. And if you know anything about brain theory, you'll understand that. If you don't, I really suggest that you do a little research on it. Just do an internet research to get some information. But their brain is being totally rewired. So when they forget things or they act like they're in outer space somewhere, generally it's because their brain is just going through these tremendous changes. So helping them to manage their impulsivity is important in terms of helping them think about, what they're doing. Thinking before you act. It's not always easy in these ages when kids are going through all these different changes. Listening with understanding and empathy, thinking flexibly. We this is something that sometimes gets lost in sort of strict curriculums where kids aren't given a chance to think flexibly and to think of different ways to think of things. And these are important too. Thinking about thinking, for me, this is really important. How do you know what you know? If you don't think about that or reflect on that, and I ask you to do that quite often, then how do you know what you know? Okay, so and so here's a good example. American Idol. And when they first do the they first do the tryouts, and I'm not even an American Idol fan, but they first do the tryouts. People who think they can sing get up and sing and make fools of themselves. They can't sing, but they think they can. This is false metacognition. So it's important for us to be able to say, you know what, I don't know this. You might think you know it. I might think I know it, but I really don't. But when you do know something, when you own it, you should know why you do it. So metacognition is really, really important. And this is where we really sort of help kids to reflect about what they're doing. And so it doesn't just become rote performance. Striving for accuracy, again, you don't have to be perfect every time, but settling for good enough is not cutting it really. Questioning and posing problems, again, these are things that humans do. We do it. I mean, it's just so important to intelligent thinking. Applying past knowledge to new situations. Again, this is where our scaffolding and building background knowledge and schema come in. Thinking and communicating with clarity and precision. Gathering data through all senses. Creating, imagining, innovating, responding with wonderment and awe. Taking responsible risks. This is one thing we really have to help our teenagers to do. Finding humor. Thinking interdependently, remaining open to continuous learning, the right stuff, okay? The right stuff are developing these habits of mind. So I invite you, to read this thoroughly and think about when you're you're thinking about constructing your unit plans, what are the habits of mind that I want to instill in my students? What are the habits of mind that are really important for my discipline and for just being a functioning human being? And then procedural and conceptual knowledge. Conceptual knowledge is often conflated with declarative knowledge. I think there's a little bit of difference there. So here's another ASCD article. This little box really, for me, sort of helps me think about conceptual knowledge. Again, they're calling it declarative knowledge. I think it's a little different. Declarative is just things you can say. Concepts are understanding what's going on with that. So it's knowledge that's rich in relationships and understanding. So it's not just knowing something, it's being able to connect it and having this network. A connected web of knowledge, a network in which the linking relationships are as prominent as the discrete bits of information. So it's not just being, a trivia bank, but being able to connect those things. Examples of concepts are, and this is from mathematics, so that's why we're getting mathematical concepts. Square, square root, function, area, division, linear equation, derivative, polyhedron. If you're not a math teacher, I challenge you. Can you explain those concepts well? I don't think I can. Maybe some of them, but being able to understand these concepts and what they are, being able to visualize and picture them. By definition, conceptual knowledge cannot be learned by rote. It must be learned by thoughtful, reflective, mental activity. So this, for me, is the difference between declarative knowledge and conceptual knowledge. Because declarative knowledge is, just being able to say something, okay? But conceptual knowledge is having some thoughtful and reflectiveness about it. Is it possible to have conceptual knowledge, understanding about something without procedural knowledge? Good question. And then we look at the procedure. Well, it's just knowledge of formal language, knowledge of rules, algorithms, procedures, and so forth. So this is from a math text, so that's why we're getting the math things. But I would say that we can apply this across the board, okay, in terms of what conceptual knowledge and procedural knowledge is. I've given you other links here to help you for different disciplines. I couldn't find in-depth material for each discipline, and I don't want to continually parse things out, but I think sometimes it's helpful to look at our discipline to get a sense of what procedural and conceptual is. This is a slideshow for social studies, but really it's across the board, and I'd invite you to look at this in terms of conceptual knowledge and conceptual teaching. So what does it mean to teach conceptually? It's a great PowerPoint, so I'll just let you look at that on your own terms. So again, I'm just trying to pull these pieces together here. I'm not asking you to do this all at once. These are all things you have to think about when you're constructing lessons and unit plans, and it's a tremendous amount of things to think about. But here's where we begin that thinking. So we start with standards and learning outcomes. We have to understand the difference between procedural and declarative and conceptual knowledge. We have to think about what habits of mind we want our students to acquire. These are all important, and these are things we have to flesh out. We have to think about and jot down. It's not going, you're not going to decide on I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's going to evolve as you continually move through constructing your unit, but you have to start with a baseline. All right. So throughout your unit, you'll have assessment, okay? And so I want to address the assessment here because the final project for your unit is generally a summative assessment. That's usually some kind of a paper, research, community work, a test, performance. So we need to know the difference between formative and summative. Notice that formative I've listed as journals, observations, self-assessment, quizzes, and so forth and so on. There's lots of formative assessments. Formative assessments are assessments to know where kids are, okay, so that you can readjust your teaching or remediate where you need to. Summative assessment sort of gives you a snapshot, of what's going on. So this is a nice little, this is a slideshow, but I just pulled this one slide because I think it really helps us. So formative assessment is the process of gathering ongoing information during instruction to determine what students know and can do, and to provide descriptive feedback to improve learning and inform teaching. Feedback is generally directly connected to student learning goals and reference to student-generated criteria. So those things that I mentioned along the way, the big burning question is, do those things get graded? In a grading system of, the 100 points, ABC, generally they are. Most teachers will grade form quizzes or journals, mostly because students won't do it unless they get a grade for it. This has been the paradigm. And this presents a real problem for us when we go into standards-based or proficiency-based learning, because the grade is for the summative assessment. It's if they've met the standard. So summative assessment is the celebration, summary, evaluation, or judgment reached at the end of a topic, theme, unit, semester, term, or school year based on performance, products, or formative assessment data. So it could be the gathering of the formative assessments together and looking at it to see if the student has learned. Generally, formative assessment will show you a progression or a regression, depending on what's going on with the child. But generally, like I said, in a grading system such as we are used to, those things get graded and it all gets averaged into a final grade. It's how I have to do it. That's the system I have here at the university. It's difficult because I would rather look at where you are at the end, not at where you've been. So I kind of get around that by giving participation points for things. Like some of the things you turn in the discussion, if you do it, you get credit for it. A lot of high school teachers and middle school teachers do that as well. So we really get into this problem of then what do we do with this formative assessment? And if we don't grade it, will students take it seriously? I don't have the answers to these questions, folks, but these are questions that are swirling around us. So again, understanding summative and formative assessment will be important to you. Your summative and you may have more than one summative assessment. There may be points in your unit where you need to do summative assessment for a particular standard. Excuse me, and that's okay as long as you are remembering that that the formative assessment is not the summative assessment and vice versa. Okay. So take a look at that slideshow. I think it'll really help you think about it. And then there's another article here to read about formative assessment as well that I didn't pull up. So that's it for this. I just wanted to be thinking about that. You don't have to have all your assessments in place for this week. What I am asking you to do is to think about what your final project's going to be. What is your formal, your summative assessment going to be? And if we scroll down here to your assignment, it says, and it's only a discussion. I mean, you're not going to turn anything into me. You're going to go to the discussion topic, the discussion forum, and you're going to share your inquiry, question, theme, or topic, whatever you've decided is going to be your unit of study. You're going to list your learning outcomes for the unit of study, and be thinking about what the final project is going to be. What are you going to use to measure those learning outcomes? I'm not asking you to have that this week, but it's something you need to be thinking about as you move forward. You've got vacation coming up next week. I know a lot of you will want to do some work during that week, and that's perfectly okay. But do be thinking about what that's going to look like, and you can start fleshing out if you want to as far as that goes.